however you feel about Hasan Piker is totally valid, but if you care about Democratic politics, you should be deeply concerned about the smear campaign that's being perpetrated against him right now. Because for the past week, mainstream news sources and politicians have been saying that Hasan is a Muslim, vicious anti-Semite who hates America. And the only purpose of that narrative is to try to cut the left flank of the Democratic Party off at the knees such that there is no power and influence that the left flank can have in upcoming elections, particularly in the midterms. The purpose of attacking Hasan is not just about Hasan himself, it's about people like him who would dare challenge Democrat heterodox thinking, who would dare challenge the U.S.'s relationship with Israel, who would dare challenge our blockade of Cuba, who would dare to think about a world that could exist rather than the one that does. And I need you to hear me when I say this. I am not caping for Hasan Piker. I am not caping for Hasan Piker. I'm not making excuses for him. I recognize that people don't like him. I sort of mostly feel agnostic about him, like he's fine. I don't care. This is not really about Hasan Piker. Instead, it is about the way that the Democratic Party marginalizes the left flank to try to undercut progress, to try to undercut more leftist progressive candidates as a way to not have to do anything different and as a way to uphold the status quo. And they are doing this in part through this rhetorical sleight of hand where they are conflating criticism of Israel and Zionism with anti-Semitism. Those are not the same thing. And anybody with a modicum of sense can understand that. And I think that this smear campaign is relying on a really flattened understanding of what anti-Semitism actually is. And that rhetorical sleight of hand is letting people who have a vested interest in the status quo try to maintain that status quo by cutting off the knees of the left flank, by getting rid of someone who they see as a leader or a thought leader in that space. It is a very clear, at least to me, campaign that's happening. And I hope that we can all see that.
Here it is. Anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. So why are so many Democrats doing campaign events with him? We're going to explore that very question next.
Jake Tapper just straight up unconditionally called me anti-Semitic. You're a fucking piece of shit, Jake Tapper. God damn. Just uncritically. God, what a fucking... Ugh, so fucking gross.
Might not be a household name, at least among adults, but ask your kids. His new role as a midterm surrogate for some Democrats is proof that his political influence is expanding far beyond the streaming platform Twitch, where he has taken up residence. He is, without question, an online influencer with nearly 3 million followers. His rise as a prominent voice on the left is now driving a wedge between Democrats, and for good reason. Hasan Piker's past and present is checkered with controversial, if not outrageous, if not bigoted state comments like this one.
America deserved 9/11, dude. It. I'm saying it. We totally brought it on ourselves, dude. Holy shit.
Hasan Piker just recently become an issue in Michigan. It's home to a competitive three-way Democratic primary for governor. Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, one of the three candidates and a former CNN commentator, announced that Piker will join him for 2 rallies in April. His opponents quickly seized on that, slamming the decision as unacceptable, calling Piker not somebody that you should be campaigning with at a moment when there's clearly a lot of pain and trauma across our state. Our Donnie O'Sullivan caught up with Piker over the weekend at a No Kings rally in New York and asked how he fits into the Democratic Party's future.
I've spent my entire professional media career and far beyond that combating anti-Semitism. I've been doxxed, swatted by neo-Nazis for my consistent advocacy against anti-Semitism. I just also happen to be an avowed anti-Zionist. I believe Zionism is a very racist ideology. It's an ethno-religious supremacist ideology, and it's the underpinning ideology that has caused the genocide of Palestinians in the hands of Israel and also the United States of America. I don't think it was that bad. Controversial opinion. I don't think it was that bad. Like, yeah, he farmed all of the talking points, right? I'll take it.
Sorry, Gavin Newsom sucks. We need something better, and the people are demanding something better, and Gavin Newsom is either not going to win, or if he were to be the candidate and then eke out a marginal victory, what comes after is going to be even more heinous. This is what the cycle has been for the last 50 years at this point, especially post Ronald Reagan. This is what has been the cycle. Third way neoliberalism that locks in Republican deregulation, tax cuts for the super wealthy. And it doesn't make sense. The argument here doesn't make sense for a couple different reasons. One, am I irrelevant and should not be listened to? Or am I the kingmaker? Did I single-handedly cause Kamala Harris to lose the election, or am I someone that should be avoided? Because you're saying both right now. And if I'm farming off of the unpopularity of the Democratic Party, doesn't that say more about the unpopularity of the Democratic Party? Shouldn't you try to understand where and why and how the Democratic Party is unpopular rather than yell at a random guy on Twitch? Why is there so much voter apathy? Why is there so much distrust in the Democratic Party, especially right now when historically, when you have a deeply unpopular Republican Party, automatically the only alternative, the only game in town, the harm reduction kicks in because they see the harm and they go, oh, of course I like the Democrats now in comparison. Why has that not happened this time? If the Democrats don't change their strategy, the midterms won't be as favorable to them as they believe it will be. I think it can. There's a real opportunity there because there's so much discontent, but they have to at least lean into it. You do realize that most of these people that are criticizing right now are not actually criticizing my position, my well thought out position that I've advocated for years and years and years. They're simply developing a straw man and attacking that straw man in an effort to try and forcibly excise someone like myself and this community away from the Democrats. They want the Democrats to go to them. They want the Democrats to go to them so that 50 people can watch what they have to say. They don't want the Democrats to go to people like myself. They don't want the Democrats to listen to people like myself. That's all this is. But there will come a point in time when your third eye will open as well, where you go, kind of feels like the controlled opposition attitude that the Democrats represent is part of the reason why there's a lot of enmity towards them. This doesn't mean that like the Democrats are not, the Democrats are unsalvageable or they cannot have good candidates that we can use. You can. Zoran is a great example of this. AOC is a good example of this as well.
So everybody watch what's going to start happening. It's already happening. If you don't know who he is, and some of you don't, this is Hasan Piker. And he is unabashedly anti-corruption. And he's on the left. Except the left hates him. The Democratic establishment, the centrists, absolutely hate him. Because he calls out the corruption from the Democratic Party as much as he calls out the corruption from the Republican Party. And he's gaining and he's so popular with young men. He's the blue pill pipeline that the Democrats need to pull in young, vulnerable men so they don't get caught up and swallowed up by the red pill content. I mean, it's already bad enough that you had Charlie Kirk and then you got Ben Shapiro and you've got Nick Fuentes and the list goes on. And we don't have hardly anybody on the left, but we do have him and he's killing it. He's killing it. And a lot of people on the left don't like him because he speaks to his base, which are primarily young men. So whatever. If you listen to what he has to say, point by point by point, what is wrong with this country, why both parties are corrupt, how they're corrupt, and what kind of economic and social programs and platforms we need to fix this country. If you're a Democrat, you're going to agree with him on every single point. Unless you are a Zist, then you're going to hate him, okay? But I'm giving you this warning right now because he is being viciously attacked. Why? He's getting plugged in electorally. He's endorsing progressives who are running. He is doing travel circuits with people like Bernie Sanders, energizing people to get out and vote for progressives and to vote for candidates who are going to give you affordable health care and not send our tax dollars to other countries that start with an I. And you know who's attacking him? The Democratic establishment. That multi-million-dollar pool of privileged millionaires who consult with all the centrist Democratic candidates and politicians to telling them to feed us, whisper sweet nothings to us so that once we elect them, we get nothing from them. They are out and they are attacking him. So I'm just giving you the heads up. This is Hasan Piker. You're going to be seeing a lot more of him and you might be confused because of what you're hearing. But question the source, do your own research, listen to him before you fall for the propaganda designed to destroy progressives.
I want to destroy the Republicans. I want to destroy the Republican Party. And it blows my fucking mind that a lot of these guys seemingly don't want to do that. They don't want to do that at all. They claim that they want to do that, but they just want to behave like a lighter version of the Republican Party. It is very odd, though, that their angle of attack has been to lean into perhaps the currently most unpopular narrative they can, which is defending Israel. One of the things that I consistently repeat to politicians that are listening, both in private and in public, is to be bold and to be brave and to be unafraid to lead. AOC, unfortunately, sometimes is very afraid to lead. She leads the pack on an issue. Everybody yells at her, especially the groups yell at her, and she's so hyper responsive to those groups that she will back away. For every step that she takes in the right direction, she'll take like 8 steps back in the wrong direction. She'll like say Israel's doing a genocide, and then next week she'll do a Zoom call with a bunch of like pro-Israel advocacy organizations on the dangers of anti-Semitism that is greatly expansive on the definition of anti-Semitism that actually factors in anti-Zionist commentary as well. And then everyone's like, well, what the fuck are you doing?
Hasan Piker is getting absolutely piled on by Democratic harm reduction voters who are saying, hey, we don't want your purity test. This whole thing is a lot more complicated than that. The Dem Party has to grapple with the fact that different voters have different motivations, and this is the Democratic Party. Some of us have actual convictions. The party has to make voters want to vote for them. It is our duty as citizens to vote, but it is not our responsibility to vote for the party we're registered for. The party has to bring us in and make us want to vote for them. Most voters are harm reduction voters or strategic voters who go in there and say, who is the lesser of the two evils? That's a fine voting strategy if you can do that. At many points in my life, I have definitely been a harm reduction voter. But there are times when I'm like, there are things I believe in so deeply that I can't have a Democratic Party insisting that I compromise on what I believe in to support you. The sort of voter who says, these are my principles and I need you to meet them, is quite often dismissed as a purity test voter. A better term is an expressive voter or an ideological voter. An expressive voter as in voting is an expression of my beliefs. Some voters vote as an expression of who they are. They're not making a strategic choice. They are going to the political system saying, I need something. Will you please give this to us? Some voters cannot make a strategic choice. Let's take Gaza, which was a hugely divisive issue among Democrats last time around. I, for one, have family in the Middle East. I cannot make a strategic choice around who will be better when both sides are far too pro-Israel for me. In the past, I have hated myself for voting for people who would not insist on ending the G-side in Gaza. The harm reduction voters say, well, Trump is absolutely worse on this issue, so you should make a political calculation. But if both parties are in favor of G-side, if both parties are supporting G-side, then both of you are below the acceptable line for my political calculus. So my party is asking me to compromise on a life and death issue that is extremely important to me, thus making me a hypocrite for having marched and donated and protested. So now it's election time and I have to compromise on my principles on a life and death issue rather than saying, why aren't you meeting these important Democratic voters where they are and saying, these are losable voters, we need them, we are going to be there for them. If this issue is critical to who I am, my identity, who I am as a political thinker, how can you ask me to compromise on that issue? You may have issues that you are able and willing to compromise on, but some voters cannot compromise on certain issues. It's our duty to vote, but it's not our duty to vote for a party that insists we compromise on our core political values. Right now, a lot of Dem voters are calling for a change in Gaza, taxing billionaires, Medicare for all, and abolishing ICE. Gavin Newsom for one example, is not for any of those things. Yes, the other guy is worse, but this guy doesn't meet the bar for anything that I need politically. I mean, Gavin Newsom told Ben Shapiro that he believes that there is no G-side. How am I supposed to vote for a G-side denier? Yes, Trump is worse, but Dems on this issue are below the acceptable level. Gavin Newsom is a corporate Dem who's not in favor of any of the things that real Dems want. It feels like I'm being shamed to go to a restaurant that doesn't have anything that I want. But you gotta eat here because the other restaurant is McDonald's. Well, this restaurant also does not take care of me and the things that I need. The harm reduction voters want us to compromise on what we believe. How about pushing the party to speak to the things we need? The party should reach out to the voters and meet them ideologically where they are, not demanding that the voters get in line and vote no matter what.
If you don't know who Hasan Piker is, he's one of the few people on the left who actually talks like we're in a fight. And whether you agree with him or not, we need a lot more of that. The issue isn't that Hasan is too much. The issue is that the left has spent years being nowhere near enough. And this is not about agreeing with every single thing that he says. That's a trap. But the second someone on the left actually breaks through and reaches a younger audience and speaks with force and stops sounding like they were assembled in a fucking focus group, Democrats immediately start clutching their pearls like the problem is tone. Not the right-wing propaganda machine, not the shameless line, not the people openly pushing their authoritarian bullshit. No, the issue is that someone on the left made the room uncomfortable. And look, some of the criticism of Hasan is real. He's been accused by Democratic officials and Jewish critics of crossing lines on Israel and anti-Semitism. And he denies that, saying he's anti-Israel, not anti-Jewish. Fine, people can argue that. The debate is real. But here's what also happens to be real. Democrats and Democratic candidates keep engaging with him anyway, because he reaches an audience that they suck at reaching. Bernie and AOC and even Gavin Newsom, they all have interacted with him or have planned appearances around that space because the audience is there. And that's the real lesson. Hasan matters because he proves something I've been saying for years. Democrats and the left in general are terrible at messaging. They are so obsessed with sounding measured and responsible and professionally moisturized that they forget the one basic truth of politics. People need to feel that you actually give a shit. Republican messaging is a bar fight. Democratic messaging is a customer service email. So no, the answer is not that the left needs to become Hasan Piker. The answer is that the left needs more people willing to stand up and make waves and stop acting like bluntness is a character flaw. Because this soft-worded, tiptoeing, consultant-approved bullshit is exactly how the left keeps losing the messaging war. And at some point, Democrats need to decide whether they want to be right in private or effective in public. Democrats don't have a policy problem, they have a spine problem. And if you want to help with real legal fights, head to our website, click shop, a portion of all the profits go directly to the ACLU. And remember, I'm not the dark left. Together, we're the dark left. Please join me in helping to call out the bullshit and bring some sanity back to the conversation.
In my last video, I said, like, when you grow up and your parents don't show you a lot of love, don't pay attention to you, you go looking for love in other places. I didn't think I needed to, like, flesh out that analogy further in regards to the Democrats and Hasan Piker. The Democrats have refused to align with their base. They have chosen not to. And I'm not talking about, like, the far left. I'm talking about their base in regards to Palestine and Israel, right? They refuse to align with their base, so much so that they try to align their base with them by telling you, well, you just get your news from TikTok. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand. And what happens as a result of that is that their base becomes further radicalized, right? This is not an assessment about whether Hasan Piker is good or bad. I need you to understand that. It's an assessment about what happens when the politicians don't align with their base. That is the outcome that happens. Just as when parents do not show that love and affection to their children that they need, they're going to look for it somewhere else. That is the point that I'm making. The video is not about Hasan Piker. It is simply about the Democrats and why this has happened.
Despite the fact that it was liberals and Democrats who started this conversation, they often ask, why is everyone saying they won't vote for Gavin Newsom 2 years before the election? Why? This is why. Liberals tend to want to live in this fantasy where they get to pick their candidates, despite the copious amounts of evidence and history of the party they cape for dictating who they get to vote for. It is not democratic for Barack Obama to call up all of the candidates in 2020 and say, hey, lean back and I'll give you X, Y, and Z so that Joe Biden can win. It is very anti-democracy for the Democratic Party and its apparatus to come out and say, if you are running against an incumbent, we will not support you, unless you happen to be Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman or AOC or anyone who just so happens to slightly, vaguely, not full throttle support Israel. Centrist media is going to float the candidates that the Democratic Party wants you to pay attention to. And that's a problem. That is anti-democracy. And articles like this are prime examples of how anti-democracy the Democratic Party is. None of you had a say in whether or not Gavin Newsom was going to be seen as a de facto Democratic Party leader. And yet here you guys are, running interference as if it was your idea. That is dangerous, and that's one of the primary reasons why so many people are coming out of the woodwork to let you know, 2 years ahead of the fucking presidential election, that they are not going to give Gavin Newsom their vote. So if you consider yourself a member of the Democratic Party, it is incumbent of you to make sure that motherfucker isn't the de facto leader of a party you want to give power to.